Crucial conversations. My name is Adam Soltani. I'm the Chief Program Officer for the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits. We are a statewide organization here in Oklahoma that supports the nonprofit sector through member benefits, trainings, consulting services, talking about important topics such as this. Let me tell you a story. I graduated from the University of Central Oklahoma down in Edmond, Oklahoma in 2009. Got a degree in sociology. Really loved studying sociology, fascinating subject matter. But the one thing that my professors did not tell me was that with the bachelor's in sociology, you're not going to find a whole lot of jobs. So I started looking for where I could get a job. Got the Department of Human Services. Okay, that was kind of the precursor to getting into nonprofit work. Realized I could work with people and provide them with benefits to help them enhance the quality of their life to the best of their abilities, such as SNAP benefits, Medicaid, daycare assistance, things of that nature. And so I really enjoyed working there for 3 years until I moved into the nonprofit sector. First day on the job, in the summer of 2009, I went to my supervisor and I said, Heather, her name is Heather Nelson, we're still friends to this day. I said, Heather, need to have a conversation with you. Now, one thing you probably don't know by looking at my name or just by looking at me is that I am a Muslim. I'm a practicing Muslim, my choice, my religion. And so that means that I have to pray 5 times a day. Dawn, noon, afternoon, sunset, and nighttime. During the day, during working hours, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., at the minimum, one of those prayers in the shorter daylight months, winter months, could be 2 of those prayers which fall during the workday. And now I debated with myself, right? And this is an example of a crucial conversation. I debated with myself, do I go to my supervisor and talk to her about this? Because if I cannot be who I am at work, and if I have to sacrifice something that's very important to me on a personal level, then I feel like I can feel comfortable with work. I won't want to be here, and that could diminish my work capacity. But then on the flip side, I said it's going to create unnecessary problems for me. Right? And that right there is kind of the idea of what presents a crucial conversation. It's high stakes. This could go either good, it could go really bad, or somewhere in between. Okay, so I went to Heather and explained to her, just this is great. I want to support you. I want to make sure you have what you need to be successful at work. You get 15-minute breaks, you get a lunch break, so you can work whatever you need to into those things. As long as your work is your priority when you're here, you want to support other aspects of things that are important to you. And so that's great. She said, but I need to run this by the director just to make sure we're okay. Oh, I thought we were good, but we're not quite good yet. And so I go back to my desk, and a few hours later, Heather comes and gets me, and she said, Adam, let's go to the director's office. That's all she said, just like that. I said, okay. So here I am walking to the director's office, just like this, thinking, oh crap. How am I going to explain to my wife this was my first and last day of work, right? I was thinking I did something that was going to cause me to lose my job, right? Like, well, we don't want to accommodate for all these things, so we're just going to let them go before we get too far. So I walk in, and there's the director, Rhonda Baker, the assistant director, Leisure Rights, and my supervisor, Heather Nelson. Okay, and we're sitting in the car, and I'm thinking, what is happening? I'm feeling very anxious, very intimidated. And Ron just looks at me, and she was not very intimidating in terms of stature, okay, but she was very intimidating in terms of presence. Like you could feel her presence. I said, Adam, I heard you want to pray at work. Is that correct? I said, yes. I said, well, that's wonderful. Please tell us more about it, because I've never had anyone ask about this before. I just want to learn more. And all of a sudden, relief, right? I was like, okay, this is going to go in a good direction. And in fact, when I explained to her that it only takes 5 to 10 minutes, it's not going to disrupt my workday, work will always remain a priority, and I don't need to meet any special accommodations in terms of space. I'll pray right on my cubicle is fine, because if you've never seen a Muslim pray, it's a physical prayer, so it involves bowing and prostrating movements. And so I said, take 5 to 10 minutes, no problem. She said, oh, we'll give you a private room. I said, no, I don't want a private room because I don't want Anyone that think I'm being treated differently, I'll be fine. And the relationship was really great from there on out. And for every workplace I went to up until today, I've never had an issue with this. But I say all that to say, this was a crucial conversation I was having without realizing it was a crucial conversation. And it worked out in a very positive way. But there have been instances such as this where things don't always work out well. Or there could be even more high-stakes conversations that need to be had that if they're not had, it can be detrimental to an organization and the people they serve. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to understand what are crucial conversations. I'm going to provide you with a 4-step framework for how to approach these conversations. We're going to have some examples and some practice scenarios, and then the idea of creating an action plan to approach crucial conversations. So, why does this matter? Because nonprofits are all about impact. Okay, nonprofits work with people, nonprofits are for the public good. So, crucial conversations can impact the mission, the relationships of nonprofits, right? Nonprofits want to have good relationships with the people they serve, but in order to have good relationships with the people you serve, you have to have good relationships with the people you work with within the organization. And then lastly, resources are very important, okay? That's internal and external resources. That's not just money, but that's also human capital, emotional capacity, and so on and so forth. What makes a conversation crucial? I've already mentioned high stakes, okay? So something is at stake in having that conversation. In the case of my example, it was my job, or at least I thought it was my job, right? If not my job, then maybe my feeling or my ability to be comfortable at work was at stake. Varying opinions, people could agree or disagree on the topic, and strong emotions, people feel passionate or triggered by the topic, right? Now, by definition, people who work with nonprofits are passionate about the work they do. They're driven by the mission, by the goal. So that's a given, but it's important to know that emotions play a very integral part in these conversations. What are some common nonprofit crucial conversations? An underperforming volunteer. Longtime volunteer whose daughter is a major donor consistently arrives unprepared. Oh, what makes that a crucial conversation? Donor, right? The daughter's a donor, the volunteer comes unprepared, right? So there's a high stake there, and that high stake is the money, right? And the relationship. Board member overreach. Respected board member makes operational decisions without consulting staff. Right? Something at risk there is the success of the organization performance. Program effectiveness. Data shows a beloved program isn't working, but questioning it feels like a personal attack. One of the things nonprofits are really good at is we've done it like this for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and we just don't want to let go of it, right? Even though it's still not as effective or impactful as it once was, especially if it's tied to somebody who's been there a long time, it's named after a donor or something along those lines. And then values versus funding. A major funder wants changes that conflict with organizational mission. You get $100,000 from a private foundation, everything's going well, and then all of a sudden they have a shift in their priorities. What do? Okay, so these are examples of common crucial conversations. Why we struggle? There are typically two ways we want to approach these things, neither of which are good, and so we're going to go through the process of how to make them better. But typically as human beings, we either go silence or violence, okay? And silence means we withdraw, avoid the topic entirely, understate concerns, or pull back from relationships. Just don't want to talk about it. If I don't talk about it, it does not exist, okay? That's me. Violence is my wife. Okay? So, forcing views, forcing opinions, right? Attack the person's character, control or dominate the conversation, use your position of power inappropriately. Neither silence nor violence gets you to where you need to be. So we're going to look at the 4 essential skills framework. Start with heart, Focus on what you really want for yourself, your others, and your mission. You can think of it as start with heart or start with love. Start with compassion. I know that sounds fluffy, that sounds too touchy-feely, but that is the reality of nonprofit work, right? You have to be in tune with people's emotions. Learn to notice when safety is at risk in the conversation, okay? And that doesn't mean physical safety. I hope you aren't throwing things, right? But that means that, what is the body language? Right? We can read so much. I'm looking at you guys, I see people nodding heads, so I'm like, okay, you're understanding what I'm saying, right? And you're paying attention, you're attentive, you're not slouching, you're not closing your eyes, right? So I'm reading your language as I'm presenting to make sure I'm doing a good job. Same thing, when we're having conversations in a room, a group of people, one-on-one, we do the exact same thing. So we get a sense for, is this safe or not? Make it safe. Restore dialogue when it breaks down through contrasting and mutual purpose. We'll talk about that. And then state my path. Share your perspective persuasively, not abrasively. Okay? Big difference there. By the way, I will say this, and I know I allude to it many times in this conversation. I think one of the most crucial things, we're kind of at this crossroads, is just generally speaking in the world, but nonprofits in particular are going to be impacted by this, where we have an older generation, and we don't want to say that. We have a more mature generation of people, okay, that are not going to continue to lead these nonprofits for one reason or another. And eventually, this new generation they call Z is coming in and is going to have to take over in some way, shape, or form, right? And so I think the idea of making spaces that are safe to have these conversations are incredibly important. I will also note something that came up from my earlier presentation on the same topic, is leaning into the strengths of different generations, okay? So the more mature, older generations has the wisdom of perspective, all right? And also the wisdom of understanding that, you're going to go through ups and downs, but you always make it through, right? I'm old enough, I'm not like old, not super mature, right? But I'm mature enough to know that the recession of 2008, 2009 did not kill nonprofits. The pandemic did not kill nonprofits. Therefore, what we're seeing right now is not going to kill nonprofits, right? It's going to affect them, right? It's going to cause shifts in things. It may cause some to have to close down, right? But the nonprofit sector is going to survive these things because it's very resilient. Okay, that's something that a young person coming into the workforce is not going to see. That will cause a lot of crucial conversations, and thus having a space that is safe for people to ask questions, to talk about things, to bring up concerns, very important these days. All right. So start with heart, start with love, start with compassion. Okay, that starts with ourselves. You must ask yourself, what do I want? What outcomes would be beneficial for me? And then once you understand where you're at, you have to look at the other person. What does that person need to succeed? What outcomes would be beneficial for them? And then you eventually work to understanding what would be best for the mission of the organization. Because above all, right, the mission of the organization is what should keep us grounded, focused, and anchored as an organization. So start with that heart connection to the work. Common problems when you start with that, however, can be the need to be right? As human beings, we have the tendency to get very defensive, the need to always be right about things. Sometimes we prioritize punishing people through our words or our actions over solving problems, or we ultimately avoid conflict because we want to keep things peaceful, okay? So none of these things is beneficial. All right, so starting with heart, be aware of these common problems, because when you want to use love and compassion to lead you, right, sometimes that passion can get you in the wrong place. Skill number 2, we talked about this, learn to look, right? Look at those safe conversation signs. Are people open to speaking, to sharing their ideas, to challenging your ideas? Or is everyone just sitting back and being silent and reserved, right? Are they getting defensive with their body language? Are they attacking or blaming? Okay? So really reading the room and understanding Is this a safe space? One of the good things to do if you're a leader and you work with people on a team is to bring them in the room and don't get into, where's the update on this project, how are we doing financially. Instead, start with, how can I support you in the work that you're doing? How can I help you be successful in your position, right? Thinking about how you open these conversations can be very important. Or, is there anything that anyone would like to discuss before we start our agenda? Does anyone have any concerns that prevent them from being successful in their job or their fulfillment of our mission, right? So setting the stage can be very important. Safety risk in nonprofit settings. When someone questions expertise, right? We want people to be open and honest about asking questions, but then people get defensive. Or you question, 15 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, right? But no, that's not what it's about. Values being threatened. Organizational principles appear to be compromised. That's an important one. And one of the things I've learned is that in the nonprofit sector, if people don't feel that their values are aligned with their work, I'm not just talking about personally, I'm talking about also professionally, then that can lead to a lot of turnover and a lot of burnout. So keep that in mind. And then also those power imbalances. Hierarchy between board staff or founder, new employees creates tension. I've been with Oklahoma Center for Nonprofit since February 24th, 2025. It's not very long, right? But I spent 15 years in the nonprofit sector here in Oklahoma as an executive director, board member for several organizations, and I was already deeply embedded in the work with the Center for Nonprofits. So it wasn't this huge shift in my thinking or my career to join them. When I joined, there was a sense of a great power imbalance. Oh, we've got this hotshot, 15-year experienced former executive director coming in telling us what to do because I was given supervision over several employees and an entire department. And I had to quickly go in and shift people's thinking by having conversations around why I'm here, what I hope to achieve, and what is my role in working as part of this team, right? But sometimes being a new person can create that power imbalance. Number 3, make it safe. Recognize safety issues. Notice when dialogue breaks down, right? Are the people you're working with, are they stopping? Are they reducing their communication? Are they lacking in wanting to communicate with you? Are they avoiding you? Use contrasting. I'll give you an example of that in a minute. But say what you don't mean first, then what you do mean. And then find mutual purpose. Identify shared goals everyone cares about. Okay? You, sir, you work with a nonprofit? No. You know? Have you ever worked with a nonprofit? Yes. Okay. What was the name of that organization?
It's Baylor University.
Huh?
Baylor University.
Okay, so what's the goal of Baylor University? Just generally speaking, give me a goal.
Good Christian education.
Okay, good Christian education. So, that could be a shared goal, right? That can be the mutual purpose, okay? Every organization has one or multiple shared goals that bind people together through mutual purpose. And sometimes making a safe environment is always reminding one another that we share this in common, right? No matter how different we are in terms of how we approach our work and how passionate we are about different aspects of the work, that's our common goal. One of the things that I encourage, I do a lot of board training and executive coaching. One of the things I encourage for nonprofits, I say, how many times do you regularly read your mission statement? What do you think the answers they are? Yeah, not very often, right? So if you have 10 board meetings a year, read it before every board meeting. Have it on the screen, have it printed out before people. If you have regular staff meetings, incorporate it, right? That provides that anchor of the mutual purpose, so everyone is always on that same page. What is a contrasting mechanism? Okay, it's a good safety tool. So it helps you address misunderstanding by clarifying your intent. What you don't mean, then what you do mean. So an example, I don't want you to think I'm questioning your commitment to our clients. I do want to discuss how we can better support you in this role. Okay, so Baylor University, okay? So let's say you work for Baylor University, right? And I get the sense that, something is not aligning well with your work and the university's goal. So I would come to you and he doesn't work for the anything.
That's correct.
That's correct. But I don't want you to, what's your name? Luke?
Yes.
Luke, I don't want you to think that I'm questioning your commitment to our students and to their education, but I do want to discuss how we can better support you in this role, right? And so that leaves it open to growth, to positivity. But if I came over and said, Luke, what's wrong with you, man? I didn't ask for an answer. You could say that. Luke, you're all over the place, right? You're not doing your job. What's going on? Then you would get defensive. You would shut down. You would feel attacked, right? And so the purpose of a crucial conversation is that you try to guide it in a positive direction. Now, caveat is there is always situations that are not fixable, okay? But I don't think that's the vast majority of situations, in my experience. When you look at crucial conversations, you're giving opportunities to these high-stakes circumstances to end up moving in a positive direction. And it's all about mission, growth, and fulfillment. So finding mutual purpose, you're seeking shared goals. What do we all care about? Okay. It's, in the case of Baylor, maybe students, religion, right? With some nonprofits, it's puppies, literally, right? With some nonprofits, it may be mental health or students or elderly. By the way, I know some people in this conference are from other places, Arizona. Who's from Oklahoma? Okay, did you know? And they say, if you can think of it, there's a nonprofit for it. We have a nonprofit in Oklahoma called the Oklahoma Concrete Authority or Association, Oklahoma Concrete Association. Did you know that? Yeah. Yeah, I was shocked. So I met the lady who's the executive director. I said, excuse me, coming in? Concrete? What are you doing for the concrete? No, it's not for the concrete. It's for the people that work for concrete companies, right? And advocate for them and support them. I said, oh, okay, can you do anything about the cracks in my driveway? I said, no. But identify what people care. Okay, so thinking about those, I don't know, why did I say concrete? Because we're talking about what are the shared values, what are the shared goals. Stay common ground, articulate the mutual purpose clearly. Okay? Confirm alignment, verify that we are all on the same page, that we see the purpose and the goal, invite collaboration. Let's work together towards shared outcomes. The reality is, when you talk about nonprofit organizations, everyone needs to feel that they are a stakeholder in what you do. Okay? No matter you're the CEO or you're a program administrator, everyone needs to feel like they have a stake in the outcomes. Number 4 is state my path. That's about fact, story, and ask. Okay, so stay with objective, observable behavior, the facts. Tell your story, explain what these facts mean to you, and ask others about their path or their perspective. Okay? So an example, you want to use tentative, I think, or it seems language to show openness. You want to encourage testing, make it safe for others to disagree with your perspective. You want to balance advocacy and inquiry. Share your views while genuinely seeking others' insights. Okay, so here's the example. Addressing board member overreach. All right? Sharing the fact, in the last month you've attended 3 staff meetings and given direct instructions to program coordinators. That's not opinion, that's fact. That's what the board member has done. Tell your story. So if you're speaking to the board member, you say, I'm concerned this might be creating confusion about reporting relationships. What is that story? What does that say? What are the key terms in that sentence right there? Concern might. Okay? You're not making accusations saying you are creating confusion or you are causing problems. I'm concerned, you're showing heart, you're showing empathy. I'm concerned this might be creating confusion. Okay? Ask for others. What's your perspective? Bob, we're just call this guy Bob. Right? That's my generic go-to thing. So, Bob, what's your perspective on this? Okay? Do anyone have a relative or a friend or any loved one named Bob? Okay, we're safe. What am I missing about our role? Alright? And so you're trying to get them to think about it
and tell you what they're going through. Talk tentatively. It seems to me that clear governance boundaries help both board and staff be effective. All right, so you're talking tentatively. You're not saying, Bob, you're screwing up, right? You're crossing the line. You're not following best practices. But instead, it seems to me that clear governance boundaries help both board and staff. And then last thing, encourage testing. If you see this differently, please help me understand your view. So all of these steps help you work with that board member overreach to try to encourage positive outcome and growth and understanding, and can lead to success in the end. Team performance and accountability. How are we doing on time? We're good. Passion versus results. Addressing when emotional commitment doesn't yield outcomes. Setting clear boundaries while honoring contributions. And managing burnout. Maintaining standards while supporting sustainable work practices. So the example. Addressing burnout. State approach. Facts. You mentioned working 60 plus hours a week. Anyone ever done that before? Yeah, I have. Okay. And I've noticed you seem frustrated in meetings. Story. I'm worried you might be heading toward burnout. Okay. So again, that concern, the genuine worry, you might be heading toward burnout. Not, hey man, you're headed down a bad path. Okay. Ask, what's your experience? How can we better support sustainable work? Oftentimes, when you get others to talk out what they're going through, they will recognize the issues, and you never even have to point to them. And that's really what this is all about. Key considerations: you're focusing on mission impact, not just individual well-being. Acknowledge resource constraints. Explore creative solutions together. All right. So this is not a bad problem in and of itself, because the person's committed, but you're trying to protect them for sustainability purposes. Therefore, having that crucial conversation is important. Otherwise, if you ignore it, you're going to lose that person one way or another, either physically or because they just won't be as connected to the work. And then board governance and donor relations. Okay, addressing overreach, honoring expertise while maintaining appropriate boundaries, valuing misalignment, navigating tensions when funder priorities conflict with mission, and setting boundaries, creating clear expectations with well-meaning volunteers and donors. I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of donors over the years, foundations, individual donors, all kinds of experiences there. One in particular was a time when a donor physically grabbed me, okay, by the arm, all right, and told me to do something that not only did I not want to do, I actually was not in a position to. Okay? Now, he did not specifically say that if you don't do this thing, I'm going to stop donating to your organization. But that was very much implied in his tone. Okay? And so this was not public about it. So it was a little bit embarrassing for me for this to happen. And also very uncomfortable because I don't know how to say this. It's weird because I don't mind like baby and hugs, pat on the back, right? But to be forcibly grabbed on my arm, I felt very uncomfortable, okay? And so anyways, right then and there, I said to this person, please don't ever touch me like that again. And I'm sorry, I can't do what you've asked me to do, when I walk away, all right? And then I later, when the time was right, privately approached him and I said, listen, I'm not sure what's going on, but I was not in a position where I could do what you asked me to do. That's number one. Number two, I want to be very clear, and this goes to the boundaries, okay? I want to be very clear that if you're donating to this organization I work for, because you think that this relationship is going to allow you to tell me what to do or dictate how I do my work, I'll give you your money right back, okay? You don't need to donate again in the future. But if you trust me, and you trust the team that I work with, and you trust my board of directors who guides me in my work, then we welcome your donation, we appreciate it, and we will pray for you and your family. That's exactly how the conversation went. How do you think that ended up?
Hopefully well.
It did. But it could have gone the other way. And that's what made it a crucial conversation. High stakes, okay, differing opinions, okay, two people who are very passionate about things. Thankfully, I'm still friends with that person today, and he actually, before I left the nonprofit I worked for at the end of February and shifted over to the Center for Nonprofits. Last fall, he hosted a fundraiser for this nonprofit in his home, free of charge. He catered it and set up everything and raised $50,000 for the organization. So we grew in a positive direction because of that conversation. All right, but it could have gone the other way, and that would have been fine too, because I would have set those boundaries for myself and the organization. All right, so scenario. The foundation requests you change your service model to reach 50% more people with the same funding. So there's your fact. Story. I'm concerned spreading resources that then could compromise quality. Okay, so that's you speaking to the foundations and the funder. Ask, help me understand your priorities. Are there ways to achieve your goals while maintaining standards? Right? Because oftentimes we think, especially if you're ever been in a position of a nonprofit board member or leader, we think, money's threatened, let's do whatever it takes to secure the money, right? Because that's where nonprofits are always in a risky territory, so to say, right? But in this case, it's about protecting the boundaries of the nonprofit and then having a conversation to hopefully lead things in a positive direction, because it could be that foundation doesn't realize what they're asking. Okay, so very important. Also, by the way, keep in mind cultural context, and these are just three. As I wrote these out, I realized I probably can make a slide of at least a dozen, right? And of course, from Arizona or any other place in the country, every state is going to have its own cultural context, right? So it's important to keep those in mind, because when you have crucial conversations, you have to think of the context of the people you work with in the organization and outside the organization, socially speaking. So, for example, in Oklahoma, we're only about relationships first. That's one thing I love about Oklahoma. I'm doing my doctorate at Chicago Theological Seminary in Chicago. And so I have to travel there once per semester for an in-person residency. It's a hybrid format, and I absolutely hate it. Okay, I don't mind the pizza. That deep dish is pretty good. All right, but I don't like being around people that are just I'm going there towards the end, don't want to talk to you, don't want to say hi or anything like that, right? Because in Oklahoma, we slow down. We have conversations. I can go to a coffee shop. I can even become friends with the barista, right? Is that the coffee maker? Right? I can become friends with the person behind the counter in 10 minutes, and nobody's telling me to get out of the way, right? And so relationships are incredibly important. We value those faith-based dynamics. Okay, whether you're a person of faith or not, I can say this with confidence because I taught religious studies for 6 years at Oklahoma State University. Oklahoma is a very faith-based state. It's rooted in faith whether you practice religion or not. And then the rural versus urban difference, right? So understanding the context of where you're having these conversations. And if you're in a different state, you can of course think about what are the cultural contexts of your state. So let's look at some scenarios. Who would like to volunteer to answer these questions? If you don't volunteer, I'll tell you. Yes, I taught at a university, so I have experience in doing that. How about you? I didn't volunteer. Well, you've been taking pictures. You've been so attentive, All right, so
I can share with everybody.
And you can ask for help from the ground, right? Because it's like, who wants to be a phone a friend, okay. So the challenge, your community mentorship program is popular, but education shows minimal impact. The program director feels personally attacked when you bring up the data. What facts would you share?
I think I shared participation, how much we're outreaching to people, whether it's digital interactions, physical interactions, all interactions.
Good. So the data is very important, right? Those are the facts. And then you can also probably, because we're talking about impact, if you're a nonprofit that has a strategic plan or an action plan, you can bring that up to reference it, right? So those are the facts you can look to. How might the program, so you're approaching the program director and you're saying, all right, so the evaluation shows minimal impact, okay? That's what the data reflects. How would the program director feel unsafe?
Well, they may feel that you're coming after their job, first of all. That's usually how they look at us and say, or they don't have the whole team around it.
Yeah, or many other things, yeah. But also, we
The buck
always,
stops there.
Yeah.
what's that?
The buck stops there.
Yeah, that I have to answer to this person it's a dictatorship, not a democracy, right? But I think that the one thing that we always jump to is, oh, my job is at risk, right? Or I don't belong, which is just as bad as my job is at risk, right? Because there's also, in the current world we live in, I think this is a result of a shift in the way people think about work. And part of that shift was furthered along by the pandemic, but this idea of belonging in the environment you work in, and then also having a sense of balance. So the private or the personal is no longer private, and the professional is no longer professional, right? The worlds have moved so much. So they feel threatened. What mutual purpose exists?
Well, our purpose is to serve our nonprofit, our goal basically, whatever that particular group is.
Yeah, so you're talking about a mentorship program, right? So recognizing that we both want this to succeed, and this is how it relates to the mission, that is our mutual purpose, right? Sometimes in these conversations that gets lost, right? You're so focused on, we're not meeting the metrics, at first it feels like the question, am I not doing my job, so on and so forth. No, let's focus on our goals, right? And then last, how would you start the conversation?
Well, Bob, I think.
Oh, we're using Bob now. Okay.
Bob, I had a name, but I didn't want to.
Okay, let's go with Bob. Bob seems to be a safe name for this session at least.
Well, I feel like we probably need to find a way to incorporate the rest of our team into this, so that everyone has ideas that bring more people and get us out there for the public.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, Bob, are you okay with bringing in the rest of the team? Let's have a conversation about how we can make this program that you oversee successful. Because we want you to succeed. It aligns with our mission. We both care about it. So why don't we bring some more people in? Let's just talk about how we can support you, how we can help you better this program. Funny thing happens to me in my current position, right? So I came into the programs and membership department. I was placed in charge of the department with 6 people, all of whom are new. We're talking about turnover and burnout, okay? So I was given a department of all new people, and we're the one department that brings in $1.4 million in revenue, 40% of the nonprofit is half our budget. And so first 2 months in there, we're in a deficit. I said, oh my gosh, you guys, I just started, you're putting too much pressure on me. It's like, what do we need? It's like, we need new ideas for trainings and programs that people will be attracted to. I said, okay. Instead of putting all this pressure on me and my department, I flipped the script on that one. I said, can we get everyone in the organization to provide feedback and guidance on what they've seen and what they've heard, because we're all new here, right? And so yeah, this collaborative mindset can be very powerful. And it can work both ways. You can present it to Bob, or he can present it to you as well. But by allowing him an opportunity to speak and opening up a conversation around that, you never know which way it's going to go. All right, next scenario, the overcommitted board member. Who's my next volunteer? Okay. A major donor on your board has started making staff decisions directly. A major donor on your board started making staff decisions directly, bypassing the executive director. Other board members seem uncomfortable, but they're not speaking up. What's at stake in this conversation?
One big thing may be losing a major donor by calling them out. I'm assuming there's some bylaw. Hey, you broke the bylaws, and then you lose the donor. And then another risk would be the whole board goes up, because it sounds like this is a well-known issue that not a lot of people are talking about it. So the way you go about bringing up this issue could make other people look in a bad light, or make yourself look in a bad light, and you could end up doing more harm to the team as a whole.
Yeah.
Instead of fixing the solution, to bypassing that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's touch on that first point. Imagine, now you say major donor, we don't know how much. Imagine if you have a $5 million budget and that one donor gives $1 million a year. I mean, that would be huge. Yeah, that would be significant. I've actually worked with nonprofits that have faced this very issue. There's a nonprofit, I won't name it, based in Oklahoma City, that has a board member who's been the president of their board for 30 years. It's for this very reason. He lives close to $1 million a year, and there's this great fear of losing his money. They know that he's not the same person he was 30 years ago, that his ability to lead the board is not the same, but they're afraid of losing that donor, right? But what's the other risk? Okay, lose the donor, board combust.
You could lose the whole board.
No, lose the whole board. What about your executive director?
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's another issue. Imagine you have a good executive director, maybe someone that's been there for 5, 10 years, which is a significant amount of time, and they say, you know what, I don't need to deal with this, right? I'm supposed to be entrusted by the board to manage the organization and the staff, and they're going around me. What is the one thing out of these two you think that would cause an executive director to quit faster than the other? Is it compensation, is it money, or is it respect? It's respect. Nobody becomes a nonprofit executive director for the money, right? But at the very least, they want respect for the position and the work that they do, right? And so that's important to keep in mind. Very good. Luke, how would you make it safe?
Well, I would be very careful to not make it sound like I'm accusing anybody of doing anything malicious or vindictive against the nonprofit.
Sure.
So I would probably have some kind of conversation with the whole board. Maybe I can talk to that person who's bypassing the executive director on the side, just say, hey, what's going on? You know, is there anything I need to know about? Maybe it's because I know a lot of times people have personal stuff going on.
Sure.
That bleeds over into the workflow and it can impact a lot of things.
Yeah.
So maybe they're making decisions that they're not even aware. You know, maybe they don't know that they're bypassing the executive director.
Sure.
Maybe they're completely in line. And
Sure.
because nobody's told them, nobody's speaking out.
Yeah.
So I would be careful of being accusatory.
Yeah.
About it, and be very open.
Yeah.
About just what's going on, what's the situation. I don't have the full picture. I try to get the full picture before doing anything else.
Absolutely. And by that perspective, right, we want to understand what contrasting statement might help.
I think going in with that comment, I would say, I'm not trying to accuse you of anything. I'm not trying to say that you were intentionally going above the board, but I have seen some actions that concern me as a board member, and I kind of want to talk to you about it before anybody else talks to me about it. Maybe we can figure this out.
That's a great way. I don't mean this is what I'm not doing, and this is what I'm trying to do, right? And you start out by laying it out, like, I'm not accusing you, right? This is not a judgment. I'm just here to understand how we can, I'm concerned, right? Leading with heart, how can we figure this out
I
together?
can use the word accused of. I think that sets you up.
Yeah, that's true.
That sets you up. What about bringing in the decision? Say, okay, we need to think about this decision that was made. You aren't saying who made it, but start all over and say, maybe we need to discuss this and see if we all agree.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, words are interpreted differently by different people. And one thing I do is when I'm in meetings like this, and I've been in a lot over the years, I'm very cautious to read a person's and the way they're responding as I'm talking, and sometimes even on the fly, I'll shift directions and try to bring it back where I'm ensuring that I'm getting the point across or connecting with them in the way that I want to. And so yeah, language is a very interesting point, right? What are the words we're using, and even our body language, our tone, the environment we have the conversation in is very important. One thing I found is, you know, not just the words you use, but also, I mean, you have a desk between you and that person, right? Are you doing it in the office environment, or let's go to a coffee shop and have this conversation? I actually found coffee shops to be much better places to have these conversations than office environments, unless you already know it's going to be bad and you don't want somebody picking up and throwing a chair right out the coffee shop window or something, right? But yes, very good point. How would you state your path?
Well, I would first state, I guess the fact would be, I noticed you made some kind of decision or something's been done with your signature on it, or whatever, and I noticed that you did this. Then I would tell them how I feel like that has maybe violated bylaws, or maybe they feel like they're exceeding your authority. And then I would ask them if they feel like this is the correct way to go about achieving whatever they're trying to achieve.
Sure. And the only thing I would add to that is tie in the mutual purpose, right? Like, hey, I know we're both doing this, volunteering our time. So that's the thing about nonprofit board members is that they're giving their time for free. That's required by law, right? And so, hey, I know that we're in this together. I know that we both believe very passionately about the mission of this organization, right? And then you lead into that conversation by stating your path and asking their perspective. That can be very powerful. There is no distinct right or wrong way to do these things. These are just guidelines. So you always have to keep in mind the words you use, the context of the conversations. But excellent work. You both passed the test. Right? There's no prize. I'm sorry, but I'll think about that next time.
I'll take it.
The respect. I have an extra tote bag. All right. So plan your crucial conversation. Identify the conversation. Who, what topic, and why it's crucial. Okay. I'm sure as we're doing this, you're probably thinking of crucial conversations you should be having, or ones that you should have had or have had in the past. Okay. So identification is the first step. Start with heart. Clarify what you really want for all parties. Okay. That emotional attachment is very important. Plan your approach. Prepare your state method and safety considerations. I will circulate these slides. I know the organizers are going to send them out to everyone. These are very simple ways to do it. Your identification, you just write down the context, right? The goals and the approach. Your heart section, that's your passion alignment, right? Your heart alignment. And then your approach, right? How am I going to approach this? And it may seem, I don't know, it may seem like you're doing double work to write it down before even having the conversation, but I found it to be very helpful because, these can be tough conversations to be had, right? Anyone ever have to lay off someone from a job? First time I had to lay off, I've had to do it a few times. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. First time I did it, I thought I was going to cry. Whereas you have to be strong when doing that because you got to allow the other person to be emotional because you're keeping your job and they're not, right? And so being able to think through these things, write them down, practice them, can be very helpful before actually going through. Did you want to ask?
I guess I did well, gave me another on the way out.
Well, one person, I had that happen, yes. I had that happen with one person, but I've had 3 layoffs in my career. All of them had to do with financial constraints, and that's the reality of nonprofits, or termination of grant funding. Those things happen. One of them I received a hug. One of them I received a handshake. The last one I received very choice words in a very loud voice. Anyways, so the point is practice these things. Okay, write them out, think through them. Even get together with a friend or a colleague or a family member and say, okay, let's do some scenarios and practice these things. And then implement, okay, and these are just made up numbers. But the idea is if you've got a crucial conversation in your mind that needs to occur at work, not at home, alone. Right? I'm not a counselor, right? So I don't want to encourage you to do this at home. But, in a professional context, in a nonprofit context, if you got one in mind, make a commitment to, okay, I've got to see this, all right? So the idea is you don't want to just let things linger, right? Because they never end up in a good space. We can skip past that. Key takeaways. Speak up courageously when it matters most for the mission, because ultimately the mission of the nonprofit is more important than anything else because it's about serving the people and it's about the public good. Create safety. Make it a safe space for honest dialogue. All right, that should be the culture we're going for. Start with heart. Focus on what you really want. Start with love and compassion, and find mutual purpose through shared goals. Incredibly important. I have cards if anyone needs. I have some here in my pocket. You can check out our website, okcnp.org. That's the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits. Whether you are in Oklahoma or not, we have a lot of valuable resources on that website. We're also on social media. And then if you live here in Oklahoma, we have offices in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. We do a lot of virtual and in-person networking and support events.
So that's something to keep in mind. Oh, that's the end of my presentation. All right, we have a few minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Yes?
Okay, what if you do everything we just talked about perfectly
Mhm.
and it doesn't work?
That's gonna happen. You know?
What's round two?
Round two, so that is when you go back to your policies and procedures, you know? So the idea of a crucial conversation is you're trying to avoid going about doing things like reprimanding somebody or having to do a performance improvement plan, because you're trying to focus on positive growth and positive outcome. And oftentimes these things are because of lack of communication and understanding. But if it's something serious, like the example of the program not meeting its goals, or a board member going around the executive director, and you go about trying to resolve it through having a crucial conversation, and it doesn't end up successful, then you have to lean on your policies and procedures and go through more of a formal process.
Is there ever a time when you would suggest non-communication? I have a situation where one of my members, is really not, doesn't believe that he has to follow the bylaws. He doesn't believe that the lawyers have interpreted the bylaws. His interpretation is right. And I'm just doing non-communication with him. It's the only thing I can do.
Yeah, it depends on the situation. So, not quite identical, but a difficult board member in the past. So, a few years into my tenure, I was executive director for 13 years of a nonprofit. A few years in, and the board chair, who was a great board chair, we had a great partnership and worked well together, he got into a very heated argument in a board meeting with the vice chair. And that led to the vice chair threatening that if you do anything to remove me from this board before my term is up, that I will expose all of the organization's secrets publicly, right? So essentially violating his non-disclosure agreement, right? That doesn't make any sense. And so the decision that was made between me and the board chair was that non-communication, right? We're going to keep this person out of harm's lane just to avoid any potential problems, right? Because we tried to have that conversation with him. We tried to get to a point where we could have some understanding, and it was basically the threat. Like, either you let me sit on this board, or I'm going to light everything on fire. So we said, okay, we don't want to deal with the lighting everything on fire, so let's just maintain the peace. We know where this person's at, and we're just going to not communicate. We're going to keep them in arm's length. They show up to meetings, talk their nonsense, and leave. That's it, basically, right? It happens, you know, and sometimes that is the better option, but it's not the ideal option, because there can be situations, now you're talking about a board member, but if it's an employee situation, those can be things that violate handbook policies, they can be legal issues, and then that can get the nonprofit into some trouble. So there's always you have to look at the whole context of things. So it may be that non-communication is the best option because you don't have the capacity to deal with the other stuff.
I had a situation when I was working on the store. I worked for clothes for 18 years, and I had a situation when I took loss. Nearly my disability, because I had an hearing problem, and I had a sick heart. Well, she wouldn't chew me out in front of the customers, and I felt like that was wrong. But because of the process I had at work all the time, I'm now in a nonprofit for the non-working, and I had trouble with